Perfect.
In progress.
All right. So thank you so much for joining us for day one. Today, we're going to be covering hiring process guidance. We have 128 people with us thus far, 400 people registered for the event as a whole. So hopefully we'll see more people joining in. Please remember to adjust your video and audio. I don't want to assume that people are comfortable with Zoom yet. So there is a microphone and a video icon at the bottom left of your screen. If you hit the arrows pointing upwards, you should be able to adjust the devices. For most of the session, we're going to ask you to use the chat for communication, but at the end, we're going to have about 25 minutes for questions and answers, and that's going to be an opportunity for you to react using the react button right there and raise your hand so you can ask questions. We also have a record of about 12 to 13 questions that were submitted with the registration form that are applicable to this first day. So we'll be going through those as well. So if you submitted your question in your registration, we hope to address those. Once again, at the same time that we're asking you not to come off mute and speak during the presentations, please feel free to use the reactions. Those buttons are there. We would love to see how you're taking in the information that is conveyed to you. Feel free to ask questions in the chat and enter comments. We'll try to address some of the questions in the chat right away. And some of them we're going to catch up and lift up at the end during the Q&A as well. That being said, what should you expect today? We're now doing the opening for the event with the welcome. We're going to have a check-in in a moment and a who is in the room exercise. So because one of the things that we want to do at DPH is reach out into our communities, right? These open houses are an event to bring our communities into the department in some way, shape, or form, in this case, virtually, so that we can talk about what public health is and the careers that are available in public health. So we want to make sure that the people that we are attracting are representative of our communities, and if not, identify the gaps so we can reach out to the people that are missing, that we're being left out in some way, shape, or form, and intentionally, right? Then we're going to have a speaker talking about the public health career development. Then our Executive Office of Health and Human Services employees in the HR unit, talent acquisition and staffing and employment and staffing. We'll be talking about the hiring process. We'll have plenty of time, we hope, for questions and answers, and then we'll have a closing at the end with some helpful resources for you. And right now, I would like to give the mic to Brett Turner, who will be doing the check-in and who is in the room. He's a public health workforce evaluation manager in the commissioner's office as well. So Brett, I'll pass it over to you.
Excellent. Thank you, Arnaldo, for the introduction. Welcome, everyone. Great to be here with you today. Again, as Arnaldo just said, my name is Brett Turner. I use the he series pronouns, and I work with Arnaldo in the commissioner's office here at DPH as the public health workforce evaluation manager. Great to be here with you. I'm going to drop a link in the chat, and I would appreciate if you would navigate to that link because the check-in and just kind of getting to know who's in the room will be an interactive portion of this meeting. Most of this meeting will be an interactive portion, but especially this. So please just use the link in the chat. And I will share my screen. So there's a question, which is, we recognize that everyone is a living, breathing, thinking, feeling person, and we like to acknowledge at DPH and be aware of the many different ways that we might feel when entering different meeting spaces, different rooms. So please enter into the screen, into the Mentimeter, just a 1-word or 2-word check-in, how you're feeling as you arrive here today. No right answers, no wrong answers, or all right answers, no wrong answers. Excellent. We have more responses than we have people. That is fantastic. Fantastic engagement. I'll start to show the word cloud on the screen here. Excellent. Folks are feeling excited, curious, feeling good, feeling overwhelmed, feeling interested, excited for a new job, energized, eager, hopeful, calm, engaged, feeling observant, motivated, feeling frazzled. I recognize this meeting's at 3 p.m. on a Tuesday. People are coming from all kinds of different spaces. Folks might be taking a break from a current job, might be coming from class, might be home caring for family members, could be anywhere. And no matter where you are, thank you for being here today. I'm going to move to the next prompt just so that we can continue to check in with each other and get to know who's in the room with us. But for some of you, you're here today because of a sort of long-standing aspiration to work in a state health department. For others, you might just be curious. In the year 2023, I imagine that everyone has something specific that comes to mind when you think about governmental public health or a state health department. But I'd love to hear from you just what comes to mind when you think about the State Department of Public Health. 1 or 2 words. We'll share on the screen in just a moment. And I will put the link in the chat again in case anyone has joined the meeting in the last couple of minutes and does not have like the history of the chat. So we're just engaging in this kind of interactive check-in using the link that was just entered in the chat. 119 responses at this point, I think I can share. Words come up like community, safety, public service, prevention, surveillance, healthy people, local government, brilliant people. Hard to keep up, though I'm trying to read the words as they run away from me. There are also words like underfunded. There are, so expressing some challenge that's perceived around working in public health. Knowledge source, full of opportunity. Words like overworked, right? Enforcement, proactive, red tape. I appreciate you all, both for the candor and as well for the engagement. 168 responses, 153 people. That means some people responded more than once. Thank you. Thank you. With that, I'm going to move to the next prompt. So before actually the prompt comes on, I just want to sort of acknowledge this section and say that the upcoming questions are here for 2 reasons. For our sake at DPH, we want to understand who's in the room with us today. Who are we reaching with our open house events, so that we can consider the ways in which we do outreach in the future so that we can reach the broadest set of people possible to engage in these open house events. For you all, so that you can see who you're in the room with. So there are a couple of demographic questions coming up, which we did not ask in the registration form. In the interest of anonymity, and your responses to the upcoming questions will be completely anonymous, no way to connect what you say in Mentimeter to who you are as a person. So the first question, we just want to ask folks to select those categories which best describe their racial identity. You can select more than one category if you identify with more than one category. Glad to see every bar raise in some way. So we have very broad representation here. $93 or so responses. So I'm just going to wait another minute or so, a little less than a minute, just to allow folks time to respond. Brenda, I see you. Thank you for your post in the chat. And I'm pasting the link again because I realize some folks might have just joined and are wondering what's going on here. There's a link in the chat that you can click on to participate in an interactive check-in. Right now, we're in a segment where we're just understanding who is in the room with us. And of course, the option to not respond is always there for you. If you choose that you do not want to answer any questions, you do not have to. Thank you all. So 109, I'm going to give a last 5 seconds, last call, and I'm going to move on to the next prompt. And again, for folks that just joined, this is just, we're getting to know who's in the room with us, and DPH, we're interested in understanding who we're reaching with our open house events. Excellent. I think the movement has stopped enough that I can proceed forward. A question, we want folks to select the category which best describes their gender identity. Just like the last question, thank you. We're seeing all categories represented even at 78 and 79 responses. We already have achieved all categories. A very dominant kind of female representation. Admittedly, that reflects the demographics of the field of public health as well as DPH. And I apologize for folks that keep hearing me repeat things, but there are folks that are continuing to enter the room. So I will continue to enter the link into the chat. So a link has just been entered into the chat for anyone that's just joined. You can use that link to participate in the interactive check-in that we're doing on the screen. We're just getting to know who's in the room with us. About 104 people out of 150 or so have responded to this question. So I'm going to give another minute just to let additional folks respond here. Movement's slowing down, so we're just about ready to move on to the next prompt. Great. With that, I'm going to move to the next prompt. And percentages, 76% female identifying, 20% male identifying, 3% have identified as non-binary, and 1% identify in some way not listed here. Thank you all. Just want to ask folks, do you identify as having a disability? Thank you for immediate response there. Broad interpretation here. This is to say, do you identify as having a physical disability, a cognitive disability? Thank you all. 94 in less than 15 seconds. You all are so diligent. Thank you very much. And again, I repeat, I'm just dropping in the chat the link that will bring you to the exercise that's on the screen, to our interactive check-in for anyone that might have just joined the meeting, because I realize people are joining the meeting every couple of seconds. Thank you so much. There's almost something troubling about like the moving of the little dots. It's like some kind of specimen on my screen. 112 responses. Thank you very much. I'm going to move on to the next prompt, just in the interest of keeping us moving and because responses have slowed. I'm wondering if there are any veterans in the room or anyone who is currently serving in the US Armed Forces or military. One lone veteran or current service member in the room. Thank you to some company. Fantastic. Thank you all. Thank you for your service. And again, for folks that have recently joined, we're just doing an interactive check-in, getting to know who is in the room with us. And for DPH, we want to know who we're reaching with our open house events. So thank you for your responses to these questions. Nearing the end here. I'm going to move on. I think responses have slowed. Question, have you ever held a job or an internship at a Department of Public Health? Yes, you've had a job here at, not necessarily in Massachusetts, at any Department of Public Health. Be an internship at a Department of Public Health or not. The vast majority have not. Again, for folks that just joined, the link that will get you to the interactive exercise that's on the screen was just put in the chat. You can click on that link and you'll be able to respond to these questions and contribute to the interactive exercise. The vast majority of folks have not, but some folks have previously worked at a Department of Public Health or have held an internship. Welcome, welcome to all. Great. With responses having slowed at around 110, I will move us to the next question. Wondering who here has formal training in public health, the bachelor's, master's, or advanced degree. And I want to immediately say that don't perceive this as something that is working against you if you do not arrive to this space with, a degree in public health. I hope that many of you recognize public health to be an interdisciplinary field that needs all sorts of specialized and generalist training, right? And so at DPH, it's not even a majority of people who have degrees in public health. And so that reflects what we're seeing on the screen here. Percentages. A little over half of the people in the room. If you're currently pursuing, use your discretion to select your category. I say reflected as training in public health. Anticipation that graduation is coming. Thank you all. Lastly, what is something that you're hoping to learn today? Many of you asked a question like this in your registration form, and we tried to review those in anticipation of today. We would love to hear from folks, just kind of what are you hoping to learn today at today's open house session. Please, in the Mentimeter, again, I'll drop the link in the chat. This is our last question, and then we will move on to the next segment of our open house. Great, I'm going to show the responses. It'll take a little longer to view these together. Great, so here to learn about visa sponsorship, about types of non-medical jobs at the Department of Public Health, how to get hired, what jobs are available, finding jobs, internships, the soft skills that are prioritized here. How to get hired at DPH, employment, right? Makes sense, right? You're at an open house, you're looking for jobs, you're looking for internships. Makes good sense. Specifically, when I hear about the entry-level job requirements in the application process, you are in the right place. You will hear about that today. How to stand out as an applicant, especially if you're from out of state. When I hear about vacancies, what positions are open. At this time, I should also just remind that this is actually a two-part event. First part taking place today, next part taking place on Thursday. We'll have more detailed reminder later in the session. I'm going to just scroll through here just so we can all get a glimpse. I'm not going to respond to every question necessarily, but the DPH team that's on the meeting is taking inventory here, and we hope your questions will be addressed today or in the second session taking place on Thursday. What are the expectations for candidates? You want more information about DPH as a whole. What is DPH? How does it fit into the tapestry of public health in Massachusetts? How to navigate the job application process in public health as a field? Are international students allowed to work at DPH? You want to hear about different job opportunities. So much. I hope that you'll find by the end of today's session that many of your questions are answered. Thank you all for engaging in this. 94 people submitted a question here. I really appreciate all the engagement. That is the end of our brief check-in. Fantastic to learn about who's in the room with us. And I will pass the microphone back to one of my colleagues, maybe Arnaldo.
Yeah, that's right. Thank you so much for passing it back to me. And hello again, everyone. Happy to have all of you here today. It was very impressive to see who is in the room here. Lots of potential talent. I'm very excited at the prospect of having many of you join the department at some point. And I just want to once again center us on the purpose of the meeting today. We're talking about career development in public health, the hiring process in the department, and we'll have a Q&A at the end. On Thursday, we're going to have breakout rooms. One of the breakout rooms will be specifically focusing on internship programs. So a lot of the internship questions will be able to be asked there. Nonetheless, I think there's a lot of helpful information here today. And at the end, we'll share some resources for people who perhaps do not reside in Massachusetts and are looking to enter public health or who are looking for internships. So just stay tuned for that. And I will pass now to my colleague, Phyllis Williams-Stumpson, who is the Director of Local Public Health Workforce Development. She is currently working as part of the Office of Local and Regional Health. And Phyllis, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Arnaldo. I also want to give a thanks to you and our wonderful planning team for putting this event together, the two events that we have today and Thursday, and it's a great privilege and honor to be with you all today. So I want to welcome you. I'm very excited that you're here, that you're taking this time and making the investment in career development and mobility for your career. And so I'm going to talk a little bit about career development. It's a passion of mine. I worked in higher ed for 4 years in career development and then moved into a career later after working for an IT nonprofit in career development into my public health career here at DPH. I'm very excited to be here, and I'm going to tell you a little bit about building a career development plan to work at DPH. So why does career development matter? I just want you to put maybe just a couple of words in the chat. Why do you think career development matters? And then I'll continue presenting, and then I'll share some of the thoughts that come through the chat. So feel free to do that as I'm presenting, and I'll talk a little bit about why career development is something that starts with your commitment, and you're really in the driver's seat. A lot of times people think about they want to rush and kind of get to the next job, but really what you want to do is really take the time to do some research and thinking, some self-reflection, because getting a job, as we know, takes a lot of time, energy, even money, transportation to and from where you have to get to for your interviews. Sometimes you buy new clothing, etc. So you want to make sure that where you're putting your foot out to is the right place for you. So the career development plan starts with really writing things down, doing some self-reflection, like who you are as a person. What are some of your individual traits? What are things that inspire you for a career? And what are you looking for in the next organization that you want to land a career or job with? So this is really important to do that self-reflection. And I see some folks are putting some items in the chat, so I appreciate that. Learning is vital for growth, self-growth, knowing opportunities, learn to tackle jobs that best suit your profile. This is excellent. Helping us grow, learn new skills, make connections, productivity, enable you to develop skills required for a desired career path, recognition from your organization, important to push ourselves out of our comfort zones. I love it. So my next point here on the slide is, according to guild.com, 41% of employees left their employment in 2021 due to a lack of career development and advancement opportunities. So that's why when you're developing your own career development plan, it's really important to write down, what is the trajectory? You may want to enter into a certain position as you start a job with an organization, but where do you want to go to from there? And look at it, is it 3 years from now, 5 years from now, for example. You also can do some research and find out, how people are growing and developing their careers. So I started in 2021 as the assistant director of local public health workforce development, and now I'm in 2023, and I received a promotion that I earned, that I interviewed for and applied for the job for as the director. So you want to look at those opportunities in terms of like being able to move and have that growth and advancement opportunity. So when you're building a career development plan, you can specifically focus on job and career opportunities at an organization that really invest in advancement, and then also invest in people. And I'm going to talk a little bit more about that as well. Next slide, please. So as you're doing this plan, I have some items here that you want to look at. What are some motivating reasons for wanting that new position? So this is really like having you examine and really analyze, why do I want to make that next move? So you can kind of do the pros and cons. Maybe there's some really wonderful things in your current position or your current work experience or internship or volunteer experience. Those are some of the things that you want to make sure that you're going to have in the next position as well. And then there may be some negative things, some cons that you want to take out of the experience. So maybe you have a long commute, for example, or maybe you don't have the opportunity to do hybrid working where you go into an office a couple of days a week and you're working from home 3 days a week, for example. So maybe these are some of the things that you want. And so basically it'll reduce some of your stress. You want to look at those things that, you want to move away or move off the list of some of the problematic areas that's causing you some stress in your life. So you can do this analysis really simply, and it's really great to write it down or type it down, whatever works for you. You can put it into your phone, into your notes, however you want to do it, but it's really good to think about it, write it down, and then start talking to friends and family about some of these things before you just dive in with applying to jobs. And then an analysis of your current resume and updating your resume. A lot of times when people are applying for a job, they think that, oh, I'm going to just read the job descriptions, start applying, and then they're using the same resume for every single job that they apply for. So you need to update the resume and customize it for each job that you apply for. And then you can start collecting some samples of job descriptions that appeal to you. And so I kind of have this rule of thumb where you find 1 to 2 that perfectly fit your current expertise. 1 to 2 that are a reach, but really appeal to you. And then 1 to 2 that are even a further reach from your experience, but appeal to you. A lot of times when we're applying for jobs, we will opt out on positions that say preferred qualifications that we may not have. And so those could be missed opportunities because we don't know when there's a position posted if the employer will get all of their wishes. That means if they have something preferred like a master's degree or a doctorate degree or even an undergraduate degree, we don't know if they're really going to get that. So you shouldn't self-select yourself out of those opportunities. Definitely kind of reach for the stars and go for it. And so remember, you're the one that's the driver in your career development. You're the one that can decide which positions would be best for you to apply for and which ones you don't want to. Okay, and then this network of people, this is really important. So you want to make a list, create a list of about 5 to 7 people that you network with. And then when you're creating that list, don't just create, have like your best friend on there. You want to have some folks that you are stretching kind of your networking skills. Maybe you're not comfortable with networking with them as often. Maybe it's a professor. Maybe it's someone that you just met at a career event, a networking event. But put people on this list that can help you make these connections. So I call it my 5 to 7 network lists. And so what you want to do is have those 5 to 7 people introduce you to 5 to 7 other people. So then you end up having a list of about 25 to 34 people that you could network with, and they can open doors and give you ideas for advancing your career and various job postings as well. And knowing that person will make a big difference, and they can be kind of the voice for you and advocate for you. The next thing I want to cover is salary requirements. So many postings do list salary requirements, but a lot of times we get kind of somewhat too excited about those ranges that we see. And we have this issue within DPH and within the state. You'll see this big, gigantic range, and you automatically think, oh, definitely, I can be at the top, the very top of this range. So I know some of my other colleagues will be talking a little bit more about the minimum entrance requirements. And so they'll talk a little bit more about the salary piece. But just keep in mind that when there's a range like that, typically when you're getting into the workplace, if it's entry level, you're not going to be at the top of the range. You'd be more at the start of the range towards the middle of the range, depending on your experiences and your years of experience. And then time for researching your organization. I think this is the piece that we skip over a lot in a career development plan. It's really important to do this type of research. You could spend a half hour each day, picking out some organizations that really appeal to you, making sure that it aligns with your vision, your values, and your principles, because you don't want to do all this work, get to a place, and it's not the right cultural fit for you. So you really want to look at their mission, their vision, their values, the benefits that they offer, and how the organization cares for their personnel. So I had an experience just this afternoon. I wasn't feeling that well. I reached out to Arnaldo. I told him my situation. And as my colleague, he offered up support to me. And then after, I was able to rest a little bit for 45 minutes, get some tea, make some soup. I'm feeling better, but I just really genuinely appreciated the care and the compassion. And so things like that, if that's important to you, having caring, compassionate colleagues that you work with, that's something that really drives me when I work for an organization, because it's important. We spend so much time at work. So you want to make sure that wherever you're working, that you're comfortable, you're able to network with your colleagues, and they will look out for you and watch your back. Okay, next slide, please. Okay, I wanted to point this out. A lot of people don't know this. I actually didn't know it when I applied for my position. So 90% of the state roles are unionized positions. So you want to do a little research on the state's unions and see if this is the type of position that you would like to be in. There's a lot of benefits to being in a union, and we have all the information online at mass.gov. And so you can do this search, do this research, and have this and know about this before you even apply to a position. So this is really good to do this background research in advance. And then 10% are management roles. So what's nice is that you can start out in a unionized position and then end up in a management role as you grow and develop your career with DPH. So another great resource is mass.gov. It's such a wonderful resource. It's something that you definitely want to bookmark in your web browser. And once you start an account, you do have to register, or you do not have to you do have to start an account, create an account, and then you need your username and your password. And I just stress that you must have that username and password, because I've been in the situation where I've lost mine and I had to call the help desk and get them to reset it. So you want to make sure that whatever you set up, that you hold on to that, because that'll be something that you'll be using regularly as you look for jobs and positions and as you move across the spectrum into the Mass Careers portal. Next slide, please. Okay, so I'm going to tell you a little bit about local health roles, because I work in the Office of Local and Regional Health. And so we have 351 cities and towns throughout the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, which seems really bizarre, right? Because I come from the state of California, which is a large geographic state. Massachusetts is so much smaller geographically, and we have these 351 cities and towns and 2 federally recognized tribes and some other states' tribes as well. So in the local level, the local health departments have the local boards of health that they report up to. And often those local boards of health positions are volunteer leaders who support the local health department. Within the local health department, there's a number of different roles. This is just a sampling of them. A public health inspector, and they're tasked with code and compliance checks. And then the types of skills that you'd be utilizing in that particular role is lots of attention to detail and data management. There's also a public health nurse role. infectious diseases and prevention and vaccine clinics, patient management and care, and a lot of health and racial equity. Emergency preparedness, safety and disaster response, planning and crisis management. And then public health coordinator, a lot of administration and operations. So you need to be organized and be able to implement tasks. And then epidemiologists, infectious diseases and data and contract tracing. And then, of course, a lot of things relate to health equity, prioritizing populations and justice, and then having skills in communications and cultural humility. So these are some of the local health roles. So there's opportunities not only with DPH, but also locally. And many of the local positions post to their website. They also utilize the Massachusetts Health Officer Association, who's one of our partners. And then upcoming, we're going to have a new career website called the Careers of Public Health website, and we'll have postings for those local positions. So that'll be something to look forward to next spring. Next slide, please. So I just kind of gave a pathway example. So say you start in local public health as an inspector, then you can move up to a senior inspector, then a field trainer or mentor, and then possibly inspectional services manager, and then a health director. So this would be that advancement that I was talking about earlier. So looking at the trajectory of where your position or a particular position can go to, where it starts and where it could go to. Next slide. All right, so everybody wants to get to this step, the screening and the interview. So I just wanted to highlight a few tips on this. So getting to that screening and the interview is a great accomplishment. So you want to celebrate those milestones because not everybody gets there. On average, there's usually like 50 people that apply for a position, and sometimes there could be 100 people that apply. So if you get screened, chances are you're only like one of like 6 to 8 people that reach that screening to be able to be screened and then go to the interview stage. So when you get that screening, you want to treat it as an interview. So you're trying to impress the employer as much as possible so you can get to that interview. So I would just be aware that you don't want to focus the interview so much on specific salary requirements. They probably will ask you some questions about salary requirements, but remember, all of our postings have those ranges. So all you need to do is look at your years of experience that you have in your resume, and you will already know that what the kind of the area that you would start at based on those years of experience. So you don't need to like focus so much on the salary. You need to focus on providing background about your interests, your skills specifically for the job, so you can move to the next level of the stage to get to the interview. So I also want you to think about when you interview or when you have the opportunity to interview, it may not be the job that you land. However, that interview, like having that opportunity to do the interview, is actually refining your skills in interviewing. And if you can't interview well, you won't be able to get into a job, and it can make a difference of you have all of the qualifications, but then you show up to the interview and you're not able to communicate what your skills and your abilities are and show your compassion as well for the position. All right, and then the interview team, they can tell who has done their homework, who hasn't. So make sure that you take an opportunity to go to the website, take a look at their website, take a look at their mission, their vision. These are things that are already published and already there for you in free resources. And then this will help you prepare you, and you can incorporate some of those sound bites and phrases into your responses when you're answering, and also into your questions that you have. Next slide. All right, so now we're at the questions.
So everyone, because we're at time, we're going to save the questions about this portion of the presentation to the questions and answers portion of our meeting. But Phyllis, I really want to thank you for coming in. First of all, accepting the invitation to speak. I think that there was a lot of career advice given here that I wish I had that 10 years ago when I was applying for jobs, 80 jobs at any given point in time, right? Without really thinking about what is it that I'm looking for, what is it that I'm planning for. So thank you. This is very helpful advice. And I will now give the opportunity for our Executive Office of Health and Human Service representatives. They're here on the call. Thomas McCartney, our Senior Management of Talent Acquisitions, Olivia Machado. We share the last name. I think we're the only two Machados here in the state. The Employment and Staffing Supervisor, and then David Hart, the Employment and Staffing Operations Manager, who are all here to talk about the hiring process at DPH. Thank you so much. We will spotlight each one of you as I find you on my screen.
Arnaldo, can you hear me okay?
And I can hear you just fine.
Perfect.
I will give you the floor now.
All right, thank you. And Phyllis, thank you for that content. It's amazing, and it's a great segue to what we're going to talk about. So hi, everyone. Thank you for coming today. As Arnaldo mentioned, I'm Thomas McCartney. I'm the Senior Manager for Talent Acquisition, and I'm joined by my colleagues, Olivia and David, with the Employment and Staffing team. We work together to help candidates be successful in applying to jobs and hopefully getting you through the process and getting hired. So if you go to the next slide, we're going to talk a little bit more about that. So if you have a smartphone right in front of you, go ahead and open your camera app, and you can get that QR code, and that'll take you right to our DPH careers page. And as Phyllis mentioned, I believe you guys are going to be revamping your career page, so it'll look a little different going forward, but this is what we have right now for DPH. And this will take you to our career system, which is the Mass Careers system. Some of you probably are familiar with Mass Careers. It's the Commonwealth's career site for all agencies. This will give you a direct link to the jobs just for DPH, which is why you're here. Going to go to the next slide. So just a couple of things, quick resume 101s. As you are applying, it's important to remember to please include your name and contact information. I know that sounds a bit silly, but we do get a lot of resumes where names are not included, or contact information, which makes it really hard for us to get in touch with you if you are being considered for a position. Resumes you don't have to include a home address or a mailing address. As long as you have a name and your phone number or an email, that's really what's important. Resumes should include some type of professional summary or your qualifications. We like to see education, of course, because some education is required for some positions. Trainings and certifications are a great asset to a resume. We'd love to see that. When you do describe your work history, we ask that you please include dates of employment, which include the month and year. In many cases, when you're applying to a position, we need to know if you actually meet what we call our minimum entrance requirements. And we're going to talk a little bit more about that later in the presentation. The minimum entrance requirements are the must-haves for you to be considered for a position. So if we don't have the amount of years to qualify you for the position, there's a possibility you would be disqualified if you don't have those years that we're looking for. And we're going to talk about substitutions as well, because you can substitute experience with education, and we'll go through that in a little bit. Relevant skills are really important. Technical skills are huge, especially in public health. List anything that you can think of what would be helpful for the hiring manager to know. And we do love to see internships, practicums, any type of research work you've done, any volunteer work. Those are all important to highlight on the resume. Next slide, please. All right, so a couple more resume things we'd love to see. Sorry, this is what we don't want you to see to be included on your resume. So, don't put any unnecessary personal information unless a family situation, religious beliefs, or political affiliations are directly related to the position or the application. Long paragraphs without bullets is hard for hiring managers to follow in a resume. You can save some space by removing references available upon request. We're going to ask you for references anyway, so there's no need to put that on your resume. We really appreciate resumes that are just, simple fonts, nothing stylized, no curly Q kind of fonts. It's hard to read. And our system sometimes can't translate the information into the applicant tracking system. If you don't have a college degree, you can absolutely list your high school education. And we don't recommend photos of yourself, and it's not that we don't want to see your smiling faces. Sometimes things get copied, and over time, as someone has your resume, they might make a copy of it. Those quality of the photo kind of diminishes over time. So and save some space. We want you to be able to keep as much information about your experience on your resume, so it actually saves you some space. Next slide, please. All right, so I'm going to turn it over to my colleague Olivia. She's going to go a little bit over minimum entrance requirements that we talked about earlier.
Hi, everyone. So when you're looking at a job description on Mass Careers, some of them can get pretty lengthy. The minimum entrance requirements will be closer to the bottom, probably in the bottom fourth or bottom third of the posting. So these are what you absolutely need to have in order for us to consider you for a role. Without these, you'll automatically get disqualified by the system. So when you're reading these, you want to make sure that you're reading them very thoroughly. So this one you can see says 3 years of full-time experience in business administration or business management, where the major duties involved program management, program administration, coordination, or any of the substitutions. So if you automatically have those 3 years, I would recommend applying. You meet the MERs, so you'll get at least sent over to the hiring manager. If you don't have the 3 years, you can look at the next section, which has the substitutions. So if you have a bachelor's degree in a related field, which would be business administration, business management, or public administration, that will substitute for 2 of the years of experience. So you'll then only need 1 year of experience after you've graduated with that degree. If you had the graduate degree, then it would substitute for all of it. So you wouldn't need any additional experience outside of having your master's in order to meet the requirements for this role. And then the last substitution for this particular position is a bachelor's degree in something that is not directly related to this. So if it's not in business, then that would only substitute 1 year. So by reading the substitutions, you could potentially meet the minimum without having those actual 3 years. So just make sure that when you are reading those, that you're making sure that you meet those. Unfortunately, with all the union positions, we wouldn't be able to push you through unless you met these qualifications. Next slide, please. So here is an example of what we would be looking at. So in the last slide, we said we needed 3 years, or those below substitutions, the 2 years for related bachelor's, 3 years for the master's, or just 1 year for the unrelated. So in this example, we're saying that a candidate has 1 year of related experience. They have an unrelated bachelor's, but also have a related master's. So we will only count your highest level of education. We want to get you the most that we can. So we're trying to screen people in and not trying to screen them out. So this person having the master's would substitute for the 3 years. So they automatically meet the MERs with that master's degree. But now they have also 1 year of experience. So overall, they have 4 years of experience, but the requirement is 3. So they would have 1 year over what's required. So when you're thinking about salary, it would fall somewhere on the lower half because meeting the requirement would get you to the lowest level. So having 1 year gets you just a little bit higher. So the more years of experience, the higher the salary based on the MER. Next slide. So this is the rest of the job posting, this slide and the following. So this is what the top portion of the job description will look like. We try to keep all of our DPH requisitions looking exactly the same in terms of where everything is to make it easier for somebody to read and understand it. So the top section will always be about the job, what they're looking for. This is a good idea of what the role is, and sometimes it'll include information specifically about that team or what they're looking for. The following section will have all of the duties and responsibilities. So what you would be expected to do on the job if you were to get it. Followed by the required qualifications. These required qualifications are different than the minimum entry requirements. So we are looking for you to have these qualifications, but in order to be considered, you only need to be able to meet the minimum requirements. So we are looking for you to still have those, and we are requiring them, but in order to get through, you could still make it as long as you meet the minimum requirements. And then the preferred qualifications are just nice to have. So if you have all the required and preferred, that's obviously a good step. You can go to the next slide. So as you go down the job posting after the preferred, you'll find information about DPH and about the specific bureau within DPH. So this will give you a little bit of insight about what they're doing, so you can get a feel for if you would be a good fit or if that's the trajectory you're trying to go down. And there's usually links as well. So like Phyllis had said, if you're going to research the company or the bureau, this is a great place to start, because then you can click on the link and learn more, and it takes you to mass.gov. And then the last section is just giving an idea of what will be required once you are the selected candidate. So all candidates will have to go through a background check. We'll verify your education, any licenses, certifications. And it also has a spot, if you have any questions, a phone number you can call, or if you need any accommodations, there is a link that you can click to get those accommodations in the application process. Next slide. And I will pass it back over to Thomas.
Thanks, Olivia. David Hart, I know he's our colleague on this call. Do you have anything you want to add before I move on? Is there anything you wanted to say? I just didn't want to.
Yeah, the only thing I wanted, as I think Phyllis mentioned earlier, that 90% of the jobs, and I don't know if this was talked about, but 90% of the jobs are bargaining unit. Oh, it is right here, 14-day window for union affiliated roles. That probably is the most important thing that anybody, whatever takeaway you take from this, please understand that any position, 90% of them within the Commonwealth, you have to apply within the first 14 days. And those are union-related positions. Basically, and the harsh reality of it all is that if you apply on the 15th day and you are by far the best candidate, there's entirely a possibility that hiring manager may never see your application because you're outside of that 14-day window. So one of the things that I always tell candidates that I'm working with is that if you are truly looking for a job within the Commonwealth, you need to be on Mass Careers 2 to 3 times a week, and also understand that we post our jobs newest to oldest by date. So even though you can filter it down to just DPH jobs, those DPH jobs when they come up will be in the order, in date order, newest to oldest. So just keep that 14-day window in mind. But again, I think we're going to talk about it a little further down on this slide.
Thanks, David. That's definitely important. So if you've never applied for a state job before, and again, DPH is just one of many agencies in the Commonwealth, you'll want to first fill out a profile in our applicant tracking system, which is called Mass Careers. So the only way you can even be considered is to make sure that you're in this system and have applied in the system. A lot of times we go to job fairs and candidates will like to give us a resume and say, I'd like to be considered for a position. We can't do anything with that resume unless you're actually applied to the job in the Mass Careers system. Now, the job ID number is important because DPH and all of our jobs have a unique ID number that's attached to every job. So I meet candidates all the time and they'll say, you know, I'm interested in this job. Well, you know, I need to know the job ID number because we could have multiple of those types of jobs in many different sites. We also have 4 public health hospitals, which I believe you guys talked about earlier. So, you know, there could be many positions. So we need to know that ID number. That's really important. All of as Olivia kind of showed you on her slides, we always will include duties and responsibilities, the minimum entrance requirements. We will list preferred qualifications. The work location will be listed typically at the bottom, so you can see where this job is going to be working out of. Now, there are work arrangement options that DPH does offer, both hybrid and in person. It will say that at the bottom, and I know that's a little bit down on my page here, but I wanted to make that, that's an important note. If it does say work location, it could mean that you could be hybrid, working in that location, and then the rest of it we were working remote. Schedule will tell you whether it's full-time or part-time. Shift will tell you whether it's day, evening, or overnight. Those are typically for our nursing positions and some other roles in our 24/7 facilities. So most of the time, the jobs you'll probably be applying for will be day. Salary information is always listed on our job postings, and they're typically a range. As I think Olivia and David both mentioned, we are a unionized environment, and we also have management positions. You'll see that noted on the job posting, whether it's union or management. And again, work arrangements, hybrid eligible versus in-person. Some jobs we do have strictly in-person only. Most of DPH's jobs are hybrid eligible, and they will be noted in this section. If you require a reasonable accommodation for just understanding the role, or if you get an interview and you want an accommodation for your interview, we will list what we call an ADA coordinator. That'll be listed on the job posting. That's a person you can reach out to for any assistance that you need with accommodations. And as David alluded to earlier, it is really important that you look at the job posting date and make sure that it's within the 14-day window. Because it's really important, as David said, if you get your application in after the 14 days, you may not be considered for the position. Next slide, please.
So Thomas, real quick, a great
Yes.
example of that for everybody is if a job was posted today, if it went out onto Mass Careers on October 31st, the 14-day window would be November 14th at the same time that the job was posted on the 31st. So just to give everybody an idea. So it's always, when you're looking at the calendar, it's literally in this case, 2 Tuesdays from now, it would be the 14-day window would be up at that point in time.
I do want to make one note about the 14-day window. So as David mentioned, if you applied on day 15, the only way the hiring manager would see any applications after the 14 days is if the candidate pool was not a viable candidate pool. The hiring manager has to then ask for more resumes. So there could be a possibility you might be seen, but in most cases, if we've got a viable candidate pool, then the hiring manager is going to move forward and you may not be seen after that 14-day period. Next slide, please. Just some virtual interview tips, because we are, most of our positions, as I mentioned, are hybrid eligible. A lot of our hiring managers like to do virtual interviews. It's convenient for everyone involved, including the hiring manager and the candidate. So just a couple of tips to help you be more successful when you're doing a virtual interview. Do a speed test. We're on Zoom right now, and I always check my internet connection before I join, because sometimes if you have poor internet, it's going to obviously it's going to be poor communication between you and the interview team. It doesn't count against you, but it's important to make sure that you have a good strong Wi-Fi or internet connection when you're connecting to a call. Know the platform. You'd be surprised, a lot of people don't know how to use Microsoft Teams or Zoom. So if you don't, there's plenty of YouTube videos that are free to learn how to navigate those two teleconferencing systems. Just like an in-person interview, we recommend showing up at least 5 to 10 minutes early. It's just good just to get everything ready. It also gives you a great opportunity to test your sound, make sure everything's working properly. Set up your space. If you're doing something virtual, make sure you can focus. A lot of times, people get distracted very easily. So making sure you find a space that's distraction free. check your lighting, make sure there's good lighting so that everyone can see you on the call as you're doing this video conferencing. One really great tip that I like is you can put a lot of Post-it notes around your webcam on your computer. So if you just want to make some notes for your interview, that's a great tip. I use it all the time. So, and a lot of my candidates do. So it gives you an opportunity to kind of make some notes as you're interviewing. Next slide. I think I'm going back to Olivia now. Thank you.
Yep. So just to quickly run through the flow from start to finish as a candidate. So when you find a job that you like on Mass Careers that you want to apply to, if you don't already have a Mass Careers profile, you will need to create one and then apply online. If you do upload your resume, it will try to move everything into the application, but you still will need to scroll through and enter any information that might not have flowed over, right? Like we have mentioned with the 14 days, all candidates who apply within the first 14 days and meet the MERs when you apply, sorry, let me backtrack a little bit. When you apply and you submit all your information, questions will appear. There are 3 or 4 questions that are tied to every single posting in Mass Careers. And then the MER question will pop up. So it'll ask how you meet that minimum entry requirement. Anybody who answers that it meets will get sent over to the hiring manager. And then HRs and my team will review to make sure that the candidates actually do meet the minimum entry requirements. So we'll review resumes and make sure that they have the years of experience required before interviewing. So the hiring manager will review all of the applicants, pick the top few that they would like to meet with. Some hiring managers will do a screening prior to interview. Others will just go straight to an interview. So I would just make sure that you are checking your email and your voicemail regularly. I know when they reach out, they'll try both, but they do want to try to get a hold of you pretty quickly. I will like to note voicemails do fill up. So make sure you are emptying your voicemail as well. So that way voicemails can be left. Once an interview is scheduled, you'll meet with the team. There could be one interview. It could be multiple rounds of interviews. So just keep that in mind as well. If you are selected to move forward as a finalist or a potential finalist, the hiring manager will reach out as well as HR. So HR will reach out, we'll ask for references, we'll ask you for the CORI, which is the background check, a degree authorization form so we can verify that you do have the degree. Any licensure or certifications we would also need to verify. And then we do have a few other forms like a respect and civility that we would have you sign. And then depending if applicable, we might need to verify your COVID vaccination. So just keep in mind that once you are a potential finalist, there are a lot of extra steps with HR that you'll need to move through, ideally in a timely manner. And then once we have everything, it's all been approved, we would extend you an offer via Mass Careers. It is all electronic. So you'll be able to log back into Mass Careers and accept or decline. Once you've accepted, within a day or two, you would receive a confirmation letter letting you know all the details about your first day and anything about the benefits or union and orientation and everything like that. Next slide. And back to Thomas.
I think this is me, but you guys jump in too if I miss anything. So in addition to salary, we want to talk a little bit about total compensation. So that's your state benefits. And you can get a great benefits package. We do offer medical insurance premiums at 75% paid by the state, 25% paid by the employee. We do offer reasonable dental and vision plans. Some unions have specific plans, flexible spending account. Most people understand what the FSAs are for dependent care assistance. We have low cost basic and optional life insurance. We do have a pension plan, that's state employees pension plan, and deferred compensation 457B plan. You are vested after 10 years of state service. We have 12 paid holidays per year, in addition to sick, vacation, and personal time. Sick time actually is great because you can carry it over year to year to year, and it just keeps banking up. And it is paid out to you at 20% upon retirement, but you have to retire. You can't just, if you do quit, that sick time doesn't go to you, but it's only when you retire. We do offer a great tuition benefit program. So if you, and this extends to you and a spouse at any state college and university in Massachusetts, which is a great benefit, it's pretty much almost 99% full pay, meaning the tuition is full pay by the Commonwealth. You just have to pay for books and fees and some those other different things that come with the with your supplies and stuff for school. We have short-term disability, and we have what we call an extended illness leave bank program, which is great. After a year of service, you can donate a day to the bank, and that donation that you make goes to any other employee that may need it if they're out for a long period of time. You, as an employee that participates in this program, if you ever need to dip into this bank, you can do that as well. And it pays you at 100% of your salary for up to, I believe, 120 days. We are also a qualified employer for Public Service Student Loan Forgiveness Program. What does that mean? Work for us for 10 years, as long as you make 120 payments over a course of 10 years. At the end of the 10 years of public service, you can fill out a form with the federal government, and they'll wipe your whatever your balance is on your loan away, which is a great benefit. We also offer what we call incentive-based wellness programs. So some of our health plans offer like smoking cessation program, weight loss management, fitness reimbursement. Those are all great programs that our health plans offer. We are really big, and I know DPH is huge on this. DPH has actually their own professional development department. We at the Executive Office of Health and Human Services also have our own professional development department. Pretty much the Executive Office of Health and Human Services, we're really huge on making sure our employees have a chance to develop professionally. So there's a lot of options, and most of them are free. There's nothing that you have to pay for. We offer these to you. It's a great option. Take advantage of it. And we have an employee referral bonus program. So if you have friends that you want to recommend to us, once you're employed, you want to make sure that that person lists you in their application, so that if they are subsequently hired at the end of their 9-month probationary period, we cut you a check for $2,500, and that goes to you as a bonus. And that is unlimited. So if you have 9 friends and those 9 people get hired, well, you can start booking a cruise, because you can pay for your cruise, and you'll have all that opportunity to get as many bonuses as you can. So we really encourage referrals. So that's really important. So those are the benefits. Next slide. Oh, now we're back to questions and answers. I'll turn it over to Arnaldo.
Sounds great. Thank you so much, Thomas, Olivia, David, for an amazing presentation. I think the hiring process sometimes is not very transparent to people who are outside, right, and applying in. So I really appreciate you being here with us and being able to provide all the clarity surrounding the process as much as possible, so that people will know what to expect. And we are now moving to the questions and answers portion of our presentation. We have about 14 minutes. Unfortunately, we went over a little bit, but we will have more time in the breakout rooms on Thursday that you can ask questions. And I don't want to take much more time. Please feel free to raise your hand and get ready to ask questions. So lots of questions were already answered in the chat. I want to make sure that people have that. We will have a chat transcript that goes out in the follow-up email that we'll do after the event.
Ronaldo, I did see one hand raised.
Who was that?
I think
I
they
did
put their
see
hand
one.
down.
Oh, they did already? Okay.
Yeah, I think they had it up and then somebody put it down.
Don't put your hand down. Keep it up. It's fine. Go ahead. Destiny, we want to hear from you.
Hello, everyone. Thank you, coordinators, for organizing these. This is my second time here, and I'm so glad that we do this all the time, and I get to know and learn about MDPH. Okay, my question is, if I am a master's student and I'm graduating and I'm desiring a role in MDPH, but I don't have experience. I'm looking to do internship for that role, quite all right, but I still don't have the skills required for the role. Do I still put myself out there and apply?
I think you can, and I say that because DPH does offer many different roles, from entry level to mid-level to senior level roles. So I think it's, I think it's just looking, reviewing mass careers, finding the roles that you think that you might have some experience towards, or your skill set would fit into that based on your education experience and maybe any other experience you might have. So keep in mind, as I said, we hire for entry level all the way up to, a CEO of a hospital, let's say, or something along those lines. So just because you're a new recent graduate, I would never not look to the Commonwealth, DPH, or any other agency for that matter, that that there isn't a role out there for you somewhere.
Thank you so much. I was wondering if I have the skills, but I don't have the soft skills, just so that I get my question right. If I'm applying for an epidemiology role, but I have research skills, but I don't have the soft skills in SARS and all the software, that's my question. That's what I'm trying to understand.
A lot of that is very teachable. They're really looking for, an epidemiologist. One really would be considered probably for DPH, one of the more entry level type of roles. So, again, I think a lot of that is a lot of that information is a lot of those duties are very trainable, is what I'm trying to say.
Thank you so much.
I see another hand up. People are moving on the screen. So Jonathan, you're next on my screen. Not sure if that's the right order, but.
All right. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for taking the time to, share all this information with us. What is the typical turnaround time for a role should you be selected or, be in consideration as part of the process? I know, depending on the need of the department, that could vary, but what is the typical timeline for, DPH?
Jonathan, I think you actually answered part of the question with your question, in that it depends on the need to fill that role. One thing that I'll give everybody kind of an inside scoop on is that our hiring managers, that is probably represents maybe 15% of what their full role is. So they do have, most of our hiring managers obviously have full-time jobs with DPH that they're doing, and the hiring manager piece of it is somewhat, in some cases, a secondary piece. But my team, which is made up of Olivia and talent acquisitions team, which Thomas oversees, our job is to try to keep those things moving as quickly as we possibly can. It could run anywhere from, as quickly as 30 days up to possibly 60 days, depending upon the interaction between the hiring manager, what we'll call the HR owner, that's the person who's processing your application and your hire, and you yourself, in that if you're quick to respond back for when we reach out and we need certain things or what have you, you're very quick to respond back, or whatever it might be. Sometimes if there's a question about salary and experience and things like that, we'll send it up to our class and compensation department to have them review your salary, the job itself, and your peers in that role. So that could, that might add a week or so to it potentially. There's a lot of factors that get into it. But usually anywhere from, say, 30 days after interview to, upwards of maybe 45, 60 days, something like that. We've got a lot. I mean, you'll find when you work with the Commonwealth versus a private employer, we have probably significantly more steps in the hiring process, only because everything that we do is wide open. I mean, it's all completely transparent. And we also have, many hurdles that we have to jump to, to get people into the Commonwealth in the step process. Nothing intrusive, but just, we have to take, maybe an extra, like the respect and civility document, or depending upon what role you might have in DPH, you might have to get outside approval through another agency. Those would be more for like microbiologist roles and things like that. So, background check that way and so forth, depending upon the role and the level.
All right. I know that we are not necessarily sometimes given a very specific answer, but it's as specific as we can get. So thank you so much, David, for taking that question, and Jonathan for asking it. Z-Way, you had your hand up. You took it down. Do you still have a question, or was that addressed?
No, I don't anymore. I just realized that those answered in the chat. But I have an additional question just came up. If that's okay to ask. Do you think it would be useful to reach out after you have applied, but maybe it's been 2 weeks or 1 week, 2 weeks that you haven't heard back from them? Do you recommend us to reach out through email to ask about the hiring, process? Would that be helpful or no?
Do you mean after you interview to follow up, or do you mean before? Like
Before the interview, just after the application.
I mean, we would like communication to be there if you can. Sometimes, as David mentioned, there's so many pieces of the process. Sometimes the hiring manager may not know where they're at in the process. So usually there's an 800 number at the bottom of the posting you could call. I mean, most of the time they're going to tell you you're in review. The Mass Careers account that you fill out will sort of give you a status, but it's not always in real time. But a lot of people, like, they're concerned that like no one's seen my resume. As David said, if you've applied within the first 14 days, your resume is being reviewed in some way, whether it's being considered or not. Sometimes those are things that we can't share at that current time, but we try to at least communicate as best we can where you're at in the process, as we know in real time.
Thank you.
If you do call the 800 number, just you'll get probably a member of my team or some of the other operation managers' teams, and they will respond. And we get this question asked all the time. Could you tell me who the hiring manager is? We have a policy here within the Commonwealth that we cannot share the hiring manager's name with the candidate. Obviously, you'll know who the hiring manager is if you are selected for an interview. Mainly because our hiring managers, as I said before, our hiring managers have, full-time jobs that they're doing, full-time roles, whatever they might be doing. So they're not in a position to be able to field calls about, did you review my resume or anything along those lines. So we have to, so we do keep their anonymity as long as possible until obviously that interview point in time.
Gotcha.
All right, we'll try to get through all of the hands that are up right now. If you submitted your question in the registration, we're going to have an answer document that's going to come as a response at the end of the event. So we're going to get to those in some way, shape, or form. But sure, Saravanan, I'm not sure I'm saying your name correctly. Apologies, but what is your question? And you seem to be on mute.
Did you say Sarah?
Not yet, Sarah. I'll get to you in a moment.
I'm sorry.
It was a longer name, but yes, it started with Sarah.
I think he's having audio connections. He's not on mute. His mute is not on.
Would you be able to share your question in chat, Saravanan, while we get to the next person, and then we'll answer it as best as we can? Miriam.
Hello, am I audible?
Oh, no.
Oh, yes, we can hear you now. So Miriam, sorry.
Yeah.
If you can
So I just wanted to know, like, I have an international experience, like I work for the federal government payback in India. So will that be considered when I apply for it, experience? first question. And next, like in the portal, you have mentioned like the kind of certificate and license to be updated. So what kind of certification or license needs to be updated for that? And when considering this job, will OPT or CPT will be considered into, like, because I'm international student here on F1 visa, so the OPT or CPT will be considered for this. So these three are my questions.
So I'm gonna take a stab at this. Your international experience, Olivia, correct me if I'm wrong, we would definitely look at your international experience as long as it's obviously, and take no offense by this, is all verifiable. The experience itself. Your second question is, I'm sorry, remind me of what your second question was.
What certifications to include, is that correct?
Certificate, yeah. So when we're looking at the MERS, when we're looking at a person's resume and the MER, we're looking at their degree. Certifications, depending upon the role, may or may not be required, or may not help. A good example would be, somebody who's licensed in a particular medical field or something like that. Like the easiest one to say would be like a registered nurse. So you have to be registered with the Massachusetts Nursing Association and have a license in Massachusetts. That's a very rudimentary example, but depending upon what you might be licensed in and depending upon what the role is requiring, it's a case-by-case basis basically that we'd have to look at that. And then as far as your status goes, that question, if it does come up, what we tell candidates, what I've told candidates, is that you should continue to apply, continue to go through the process. And as we approach, if you are the selected candidate, and as we approach what your immigration status is and your ability to work within the United States, we would have to address that at that point in time. The Commonwealth does not sponsor candidates, but the Commonwealth will work and we do recognize all statuses that are eligible to work within the United States.
All right, we will have to go to the next question, but be sure to ask follow-ups in the chat if there are any. Miriam, you're next.
Hi, good evening. I just had like a joint question. My first question was like, so during my school career, I have been like a pharmacy tech for like 7 years. And with school, I completed my master's in public health and healthcare informatics, and I'm currently doing my doctorate in health science with a concentration in public health. But I don't really have any experience per se, other than my practicum I did for my master's. And every time like I apply, nobody gets back to me. So I'm kind of worried, like, is there something else I'm supposed to like maybe put in my resume to stand out from the next amazing person that applied? Or do I have to look for like a little bit more experience rather than just go by my educational goals or like educational progress? Like, what can I put there that would be like, oh, aha, I like you, or I want to work with you?
Miriam, what's really important, I mentioned this earlier, is if you can give us anything that's transferable and put that in your summary so that stands out when the hiring manager is looking at it initially. You did mention you had a public health degree. So again, when you look at our requirements for every position, sometimes the degree will cover you for the experience. So you have to kind of look and see what you actually can get and what you bring to the table if it does meet some of the requirements that we have. You mentioned you were a pharmacy tech, that's experience. So hopefully that's on your resume. I'm assuming it is, and that you're providing all those transferable skills for the job you're applying for. A lot of candidates apply with a general resume, and sometimes they don't take the opportunity to kind of tell the hiring manager a story. Like, your resume needs to tell a story in order for
Right.
us to understand what you bring to the table. So I always recommend that you try to gear your resume towards the job. Use some of the language in the job posting and put it in your cover letter or put it in your resume, right? So that highlights it. Just some thoughts about that.
Miriam, a lot of our positions, we don't require a cover letter. Some positions do this, some hiring managers that absolutely want to see a cover letter. I always default that you should upload a cover letter anyway. And that's, again, as Thomas said, that's an amazing opportunity, not only in your summary on your resume, but it's also a great opportunity for you to highlight your skills and your experience, both as a farm tech or as a student, and your practicum and so forth. So that could bring some highlight to your resume and in your application, I should say, also.
Alrighty, thank you.
Thank you so much, everyone. For the people who still have their hands up, I apologize, but we have run out of time. I'll ask you to please write your questions in the chat. We will be following up on them offline, and we will include them in our follow-up email that we send out at the end of the event. So probably sometime next week. Thank you so much, everyone. I want to share a couple of closing slides. And once again, I want to point you to our career website. It's there, lots of information. I hope that you're able to navigate through it. Then for those who do not reside in Massachusetts and came to this open house, I will say that a lot of our job opportunities, all of them require that you reside in Massachusetts or in a nearby state within 2 hours of any of our offices. And if you're outside of Massachusetts and outside of that range, there is a good national resource here in publichealthcareers.org. It's a site that has been recently created, and you'll find public health opportunities across the US. I also want to point people to our internships at DPH page. You're going to find a lot of information whenever the internships open up. Right now, I think we're off season, so a lot of the application opportunities for internships are closed, but check it out. Usually close to the summer, you will have an opportunity to apply, and that includes the Academic Public Health Corps, which is a program that's managed by the Mass Health Officer Association, which is outside of DPH, but provides an opportunity for people to complete their practicum at the local health department level. So definitely a good opportunity to get that experience that's going to make a difference when you apply. And then what is in store for day 2? We're going to have a welcome and check-in, just similar to what we did today. So you may feel a little bit repetitive, but I'm preparing you for that because we may have a different group of people present. We'll try to change some of the questions to see if you're paying attention. We will have a DPH overview that our DPH Chief Operating Officer, Eileen Sullivan, will be presenting. I'll share some of that presentation with her. And we will have the star of our show. We're going to have 5 to 6 breakout rooms. You're going to meet some employees that are doing the work in the areas for each of the breakout rooms. We have figured out the technology, so you will be able to navigate between the rooms, almost as if you were in a career fair, jumping from table to table. You will be able to transition between rooms. We are hoping to identify some hiring managers so they can be there and answer questions and even present some of the opportunities that are currently open. And I pretty much want to say that I look forward to seeing you there as well. And we will have a hiring process guidance document that follows up and an evaluation link that will go out hopefully next week to give you even more information to help you ingress in a career in public health. So with that, all of that information, I want to leave you with my thank you. We're 2 minutes over. Thanks for everyone who stayed all the way to the end, all 89 of you, 88 now, and I hope you have a great evening. We are done for today. Thank you.